Hey gang, today we're going to do a slow jump blues in C, the one that I just played. If you haven't played jump blues before and you want to, I really dig playing jump blues. It's just I can get into the groove and just kind of play it for a long time. It's a lot of fun. But if you haven't yet, there's a lot of jazzy things that are in it. What I've done is I've stripped all of that out. In this one that we're going to do, there's no funky chord substitutions, no diminished runs, no real double stops or anything like that. It's just basically straight blues. And sure, there's a couple of slides and things like that in it, so it's not totally easy, but I think it's not going to be taxing on your fingers or your picking, and yeah, it's a good place to start. So hopefully enjoy it. Hopefully enjoy the groove that it has, and you can just kind of concentrate on the note choices and why they are what they are. Okay. All right. So if you haven't yet, why don't you check out my website? It's nothing special yet, but hopefully it's going to grow into something that's kind of interesting, and there will be different offerings and things like that up there, and be interested in taking your suggestions on it. So let me know. Hey, if you like this one, as always, give it the thumbs up. Give me a hand and give it the thumbs up, all right? Do me a favor. And because that helps out with, the video placement and all that kind of jazz. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. If you like this, please subscribe. All right, we'll see you in just a second. All right, gang, let's go over these two solos. It's really two 12-bar solos, each one emphasizing a different position on the guitar neck. Let's go over them in some detail. First things first, however, please download the tab from the link in the description below. Definitely going to make your life a lot easier this time. So go ahead and do that. This is just a very straight blues, and I've written it out as just using dominant 7th chords. So one of the things I want to emphasize, at least in understanding these solos, is that particularly in this genre, but in jazz or swing jazz as well, we're going to think about chords a lot. So it's really helpful to think about finding those chords in a particular position before we tackle the solo. So I'm going to do that. We're going to start, the first one starts in around the 8th fret. And so we're going to think about the chords in that position. So we have a dominant 7, a C. This is a blues in C, so we've got the 3 chords C, 7, F7, and G7. So the C, we're going to play with the root on the 6th string, 8th fret. We're all familiar with that one. We'll play the F7, or 1 F7, we can find is with the root on the 5th string, 8th fret. You're familiar with that one, I'm sure. And then we need to find the G7. Now the simplest one is, here's a G right here, 5th string, 10th fret. We'll just keep the same form as the F7. I know there's a different form we could have used right there with that root, but we're going to stick with the same one. All right? So there's that. Now I'm going to show you one other trick that I find super useful. I've done a couple of videos on this, and they're not very popular, so maybe people don't find it useful. But I find it super, super helpful, and that is to take those same chords and to think about what are if I think about only strings 4, 3, and 2, what are the notes of those chords on those strings? For the C7, I come up with this, which is 4. On the 4th string, 3rd string, and 2nd string, I've got 4, 9, I've got 8, 9, 8. Okay? Now we'll do the F7, right? I've got 10, 8, 10, and then the G7 is 12, 10, 12. Now, I find that really helpful because if I think about those notes, those are great landing points or starting points for my lines. And so if I'm anticipating a chord change that's going to C, I know that that note is a great note to hit. All right, now it starts out in C7, so we'll play a couple of the lines over that C7. Here we go. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I'm outlining that chord. I'm starting from the third of the chord, this note right here, which is an E, that as well. And I'm starting on this particular third on the 7th, and I'm making this third of the chord on the 3rd string, 9th fret. I'm making that kind of the focal point of the lick, and ending up on the root, which is on the 4th string, 10th fret, right? That's my C chord. This is my C7 on the middle 3 strings. All right, so that's the first line. Now I'm doing a little bit of call and response, which is typical, right? So I want to echo that same line, but emphasize maybe a different note. And in this case, I chose the last note. Which is the 7th of the chord. So I went from here to here. All right? Typical device, call and response. There's one call, here's the call. And here's the response. Okay, now the flavor is going to change to the F, and here's what we play over the F. Okay. Also, kind of almost keeping the call and response going here, we play the same lick, but now we cannot end on this note because, or we can't emphasize this note because that's part of a C chord, and it's not part of this F. It's going to clash with this F7 chord. All right. So if you think about it, the difference between this chord and this chord, or one of the differences, is this on the 3rd string, we're going from the 9th fret to the 8th fret. Listen to this now. Okay, so that's one of the key differences between those chords. So I'm going to emphasize it by playing the same sort of sound, but just changing one note. Ended up by give a slight bend on that one, but that's just outlining that F chord, isn't it? It's not only outlining, it's just playing the notes in the F chord on the 3rd, on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. Okay, now we go back to a C. All right, so for this one, I just decided to think of a C blues. So instead of outlining the chord, I'm really just playing notes from the blues scale. Right, so the blues scale on C7 would be, we already know that one, right? The blues box. So I'm just playing something out of that. Now in this genre, big bends don't really work so well. They work great in rock, and they work great in sort of Chicago-style blues, but in jump blues they don't work so well. So half-step bends are okay. Little things like that are good as well. Okay, so now we're going to go to the G chord, and so first we have to get there, right? So we do this. Okay, so that lick, or that whole sequence, really starts on the from the C and gets us to the G. So all I'm doing is I'm going from this chord, right, to the root of the G. That's all I'm doing. All right? And then I'm starting from another note in the G chord. And that gets me to my F chord, playing chromatically, right? 12, 11, 10. And then playing chromatically, again, just kind of walking down, 10, 9, 8. And then moving to the third string and doing the same thing. Then I play a little spacer note. I just play an open G string. And then I'm outlining my C chord again. Little bluesy ending. All right? So you can see we're just going chord to chord over those, basically over those chord tones and just connecting them chromatically. So that's what that whole thing is. Now note, I'm going to move from this chord right here to this chord. Let's just do majors here. I'm going to move from this chord to this chord, to this chord, to this chord. All right, watch how I do that. Here's the third of the C going to the G root. Now the G third going to the F third. All right, that's the C. That's the root of the F. Then that's my root of the C. All right, so that's the first solo. And that hopefully that works really well for you. All right, so now that we've got the first one down, let's do the second solo. Now the second solo is focused on the 12th fret. Okay, so our first order of business is finding a C, an F, and a G up around here. Well, the C can be thought of as this chord with a root that's on the 5th fret, 15th. I'm sorry, 5th string, 15th fret, right? Oh, now I should say, this is just an octave up from open position, so you just take these chords and move them up. So if we found a C, we might find this, right? Find an F7 or a C7. We find an F, it might be this one, with the root on the first string there. And a G might be this one. But we've also got this one. In fact, I'm going to go with that one. All right, now our task is just to move all those up a whole 12 frets. And if we do, we get the C chord that's like this. The F chord's like this. And the G chord is like this. It's a hard one. Okay. Now, another thing I like about only using the 4, 3, and 2 strings, these are actually easy to finger. So the C chord is like this, or this. The F chord is this. The G chord is like this. That's a G7, I suppose. All right. So I'm going to rely heavily, I think you should rely heavily on the tab for this one, because admittedly this one is a little bit more difficult. I'm being a little bit more playful in this solo, and I'm using, especially over that C, I'm using the 6th as an emphasized note, which was common for that era, or that's this type of solo, is to use the 6th of the scale as a key note. So let's go over that then. So the first thing, for example, is this. So in this case, over the C, what I'm doing is I'm starting at a chord tone, but I'm emphasizing that 6th. That's A, that's played on the 3rd string, 14th fret, is the 6th of a C chord, right? A 6th of C. And I'm being a little bit playful by going chromatically back and forth between it. That note right here doesn't really work. It's not a note that I'm going to emphasize, but if I play it in the short term and get to where I'm going, it's kind of a playful little meandering, okay? Now here's the response. Okay, so that's over a C chord. And now I have to get to my F7 chord, and I play this. So that is really just an excuse to get to this note right here. But I bend to it instead. On the 15th, I'm going to do a half-step bend. That's the sort of bend that's appropriate for this time period. People used much thicker strings back at that time, and so they didn't have these huge bends. So anyway, we're going to bend it just a half step to get to where we're going. Again, here's that transition. That's getting to that F7 chord. All right. And then we've got this little thing. Okay, so that's playing over that F7 chord, and this is admittedly a little bit different. So this one starts at the 9th, then goes to a chord tone. Remember, we're playing over an F7. That's kind of a no-no, that note. But again, I'm correcting it. I'm doing that on purpose. I'm going to the 13th fret on the 3rd so that I can get, so I can have a nice resolution by coming back to the 14th and then ending up on the 14th on the 4th fret when we're back to the C chord. All right. Okay, now we're going to end it up with playing our typical thing where we're chromatically going up to a G. Here's our G. Way up here. That's the G triad that I've got, or the G7. The G triad that I've got on the 17th, on the 4th, 16 on the 3rd, 15 on the 2nd. Right, so I'm going up to the 3rd of that. And coming down and using a pedal note. And finally playing my little outlining that C again. Ending up with a little bit of a horn stab on the first 3 strings, playing a C 7th chord. If you're having trouble envisioning that, just think of a D7. Now you can't move it down 2. You can only move it down 1, but if we move that all the way up to here, oops, I'm sorry, it'd be this. And then 2 frets down would be a C7. All right. All right, gang. There you have it, a slow jump blues in C. I hope you found this helpful and was a good start to getting into jump blues. And hopefully you got the picture that, at least with this simplified chord structure, we could focus on outlining the chords, moving between them chromatically, and maybe throwing in a bluesy lick here and there. None of the 1.5 step bends type of things, but something that's appropriate for the genre. All right, until next time, leave me all your comments and suggestions for other videos. Always glad to have them. Until next time, we'll see you on down the road.